Hi, I'm Tyler Lott Johnston, and I am in the St. Mungo's Churchyard. Now we're here as part of the Build Your Futures program in conjunction with the Pennycook Car Scheme. And this is the Hearst House. We are here as part of the surveying element of the Repurposing Challenge. As part of the survey process, we teach the young people how to assess the building and also produce accurate drawings. In order to do that, we bring them to the structure, we measure what is safe, we help them actually identify what is safe, what is not accessible, and how to actually overcome that. Now, in this structure, we have them measure from the wall, from either side, and then as high up as we can. Now, then we come over to this side and we kind of duplicate those measurements as well because it's a little bit more accessible. So we measure from this wall to this wall and as high up as we can, which is usually about this stone. This allows the students to then go back and reproduce relatively accurate measurements to produce their drawings and then their ideas. Now, not all elevations are as easy as the last two that we've seen. What we want to make sure that the students can do is measure all aspects of the building as well. So what we do here is we teach them that not only do they have to measure the entirety of the wall, we want them to measure the elements as well. So that includes this section of the wall in its width, the door and its opening, as well as that on that side too. Now, once they have all of their measurements, one of the key things that we want them to learn is how to identify elements of disrepair. So then they can step back from the structure, look up. We'll teach them about mortar and the differences of mortar and perhaps some of the failings, how to identify missing stones, perhaps failing lintels, clearly whether it's wind or watertight, and any other elements that they think might need repair as well. As I mentioned prior, explaining how the building elements work together is a key important feature to assessing the structure. Now, as I said, learning about mortar is incredibly important. It can tell you a lot about the structure and its condition. So for instance, identifying whether or not there's differences in the mortar that's been applied, perhaps the condition of the mortar, and the impact that that mortar is having on the stones that are there. Now, in surveying, we get to use some really incredible equipment, but it's not always necessary in order to determine the health of a structure. One thing we want the young people to look at is there perhaps any defects that are lying underneath the surfaces? In order to do that, if we look at this elevation, we point out the fact that we can see a number of cracks on either side, over here on the right and over here on the left. Now, we want them to think about where those cracks are coming from. In order to identify if it is perhaps a foundational issue or just settling, we ask them, is it cracking through the stone or is it cracking through the mortar? And if they can identify any potential causes. So we want to ensure that these young people look at these buildings in a holistic manner. And one thing that's key to the building's health is that it's wind and watertight. So even though we can't always access all elements of the building, we can step back and observe and identify whether or not we have any slipped slates, whether or not we have any holes in the roof, perhaps if any of the coping stones are either dislodged or in poor condition. As this is a repurposing challenge, we ask the young people to not just look at the building, but also the area around it. If their idea might consider expanding or growing the structure, then they need to understand how that plan will impact the land and the people around it. So once we've completed the survey, the students take all of the information that they've gathered about the building, and that's when the repurposing challenging really takes off.